everyone, welcome to Two Car Bros. My name is Ryan, and today we are continuing our how to build a Ford 5.4 liter 3-valve engine with part 8, our front cover, roller followers, and valve covers. So today we're putting on our timing cover. It'll completely seal in the front of our engine. There's a little bit of trickiness and nuance to that with pounding the seals in and out. And we're also putting on our roller followers, which you will need a special tool for, and I've left a link down below in the description to that tool. It's not terribly expensive, and you 100% need it. It is not optional. You have to have this tool, and it's like $30 or something like that, and I would just go ahead and buy it. That way you have it for the rest of your life, just in case you ever need to replace a roller follower. It's really easy. And then the last thing we do in this video is put on our valve covers, which is a little bit of a treat. Thank you to our amazing sponsor, Summit Racing. Summit Racing has been with us for years now. We have built a few engines with them, and this series would not be happening without their amazing support. They have incredible deals, they have amazing selection, and fantastic, unbeatable customer service. So make sure you buy all your speed parts from summitracing.com. After today, our engine is really going to start looking like, well, an engine, and it's almost ready to put it in the truck at the end of this episode, but I want to be as thorough and as complete as possible, and I do use RTV in some very specific places, and it's important to get that right to make sure you don't have an oil leak down the road, because there's some pretty big tolerances you can't expect a gasket to take up. You're really going to want that RTV plus a gasket. And that just comes from my experience building engines, especially things like this. Just trust me, put RTV where I tell you to put it, and you are going to thank yourself down the line. With all that out of the way, let's jump into it. Let's put those valve covers on. So here's our front timing cover, and this is the actual one I pulled off of my engine. And you might see these little deformations here. You might think, oh, that's not very good paint. That's actually just the casting. So what I've done is just masked it off and shot it with some gloss enamel. It kind of matches the block. That's kind of the fun about building an engine. You get to decide whatever color you want on this. Originally, I had it in Ford blue, but it didn't quite match the color I wanted, so I just went with black. The block's already black, and I like black, so we're going with black. And I've already punched the seal out of here. Just put a punch on the back side of the front seal and tap it out. It'll come right out, no big deal. But you need the replacement, and the replacement is a big deal. And this was sent over by our friends at Summit Racing, and it is the Ford OEM seal, and it looks like that. Sometimes they come in your timing set if you bought the whole big kit, but I do recommend getting the Ford OEM seal on that guy. You can also just get them at the dealer for not a ton of money. It is just a front main seal. And then I also have a driving tool, and I will leave it linked down below in the description. It's a bearing and race driving tool, and that will be able to sit down in there and punch it nice and into our cover. I also have the front cover setting on some wood blocks because we don't want to pound on it sitting on top of metal, because you can damage the front cover. It is just aluminum, so it's on the softer side of the metals. So with all that out of the way, we can go ahead and install that seal. So the next thing we're going to do is take our good friend Ultra Black RTV. I'm just going to apply a bit to my finger here. And then I'm going to go around the edge of our front seal. And why am I doing that? That is so the RTV is going to be doing double duty, not only providing an extra seal, but it's also going to provide just a little bit of lubrication to put it in the front cover, because it is a pressed fit. And those are challenging and tricky to get. So why don't we have a little bit of help for us? Just make sure you don't get it on the inner race, just wants to be on the outer. So that's what that should look like, and we can install that. So then we can set our front seal in there. It only goes the one way, just like this. You get to the point where it's setting completely perpendicular in the front of our cover. We're gonna grab our race driver and install that. So it is nice and centered. Look over it, double check it. And then we're gonna grab our hammer, and holding it with one hand, we're just going to start tapping it from the top. Sometimes it might get a little sideways on you. Feel free to adjust it until it's nice and perpendicular. And you don't want to go too far in this. It is actually possible to just push the front seal right through the front cover, and then you're doing it all again. So don't go too crazy on that. I'll show you exactly where to stop. So how do you know when the front seal is completely installed? I'm going to show you right now. So you see this surface on the front seal and this surface on the front cover? These have to be perfectly flat with each other. And how do you make sure of that? Well, you can use your eyes and just kind of look for it, but what I find particularly helpful is I just take a finger and I go around the seal like this. Does it feel high anywhere, or does it feel nice and flush and flat all the way around it? Yeah, it feels great. So this part's all done. So I flipped my timing cover over and I have our new seals sent over by Summit Racing. They only go in the one way. So you just line them up. They have like a little notch and then you can just feed it in there. And it feels really nice. It's like a nice set groove that only accepts this gasket, its particular one way. And just flip them around until everything matches up. They even have little timers right there that only go one way into the front cover. So go ahead and replace all three of those, the one in the Y and the outside Y, and then we can put our timing cover on. Before we put our front cover on, let's go ahead and grab our crankshaft reluctor wheel. This is my used one. I've just cleaned it up and made it look nice, and the way it goes on, it even says right on it, front, but if yours doesn't have that for some reason, the teeth of it want to point this way, so it'll kind of look like this, and you just line it up with the Woodruff key, like that, and slide it back on there, and then we're going to put our front cover on, and then eventually the damper will come down and hold it in place. There's no like bolt or anything for it just yet, so just put it on like that and let it hang out. Now before we put our front timing cover on, what we're going to do is get some RTV on the end of our finger, and right where the block and head meet, just trust me on this one, we're going to put a little blob of RTV. Doesn't have to be like a whole crap ton, but some, and just kind of scoop it on in there, because that is like a really big tolerance for a gasket to take up. We're going to help it along a little bit and do that for both sides. So this is kind of exciting. We get to put our front timing cover on. It's been a long time since it's been on our engine. Now, when you're putting this on, you don't want to like disturb the gasket around it. You want to just kind of go line it up perfectly straight and boom, straight down. So make sure you're all lined up. The dowels are lined up down below. That looks really nice. And then I'm going to grab some bolts. The big, I don't know, funny looking bolts. I think these are M10s. And we're just going to bring that down by hand. Keep a hand on it so it doesn't, you know, slide off. Because if any part of the gasket is unhappy, you're going to have a massive oil leak, and we really don't want that. So we're going to do that, and then we're going to put some bolts back, and then anywhere. Once we get these four kind of hand in, then we don't have to worry about it too much. I'm just going to put those down to touch. There we go. Now I can take my hands off of it, and we can continue putting bolts in. Now where the bolts go is kind of funny on this engine. There's not a whole lot of documentation on how it all goes back together, which bolt goes where, but this particular bolt, I'm unsure what exactly it is, but if you've taken it apart, you know what it is, because there's only a few of them, and they kind of go around where the water pump is, kind of in this Y valley, and I'm just bringing them down to touch. I'm not actually tightening them, and the size is a 14 millimeter. Sometimes when I say this is a 14 millimeter bolt, people get upset with me. We can do that for this one as well. This one goes here. And this one goes on the other side. Nice. So what we're going to do with this one is I'm just going to put it here for now, and if it's wrong, I will do my best to go back and change it. Again, I'm also going to do my best to leave a resource of which bolt goes where. When I took it apart, this whole thing was caked in grease, so I don't really remember where everything went. And going back and watching the footage, it's really tough to tell for that as well. But just keep putting bolts in and out around. You don't want to like go really hard on one side and then not on the other. I'm going to use one of these goofy, I would call them a double-sided bolt because there's threads on both sides. Longer thread goes down. Those kind of seem like they line the tops of the cylinder head. And then like the small, kind of like shorter bolts that are the 14 millimeter, those kind of go everywhere else. Like that, and there's another one on this side. And now what we can do is just keep going around kind of in a circle. You're just kind of moving around, and what that's doing is evenly bringing the front cover to the front of the block nice and evenly, because it is a really big piece of metal, so it's easy to tighten one side down and it picks up the other side and the gasket gets unhappy. It's just no good. So just keep going round and round until it is nice and snugged up. I'm going to try to find a torque spec for you. So just start kind of in the middle and go round and round, and all I'm doing is bringing it down to being snug, crossing over, and starting from the inside out. And I could not find a torque spec for you. I'm sure there is one, and if you can find one, feel free to leave it down below in the comments, and I'll pin it so you can see it. But you can feel when it's good, because it'll start turning and then it'll just kind of go ugh and stop. That's probably good enough. So just keep going round and round until those are all tight. I'm not going to go over every single bolt. So like I said, just keep going round and round. Go start in the middle and kind of do a big circle around and around and around. Just wrist tight to begin with, and you don't want to go too crazy on this. You can crack this aluminum no problem. All you're doing is creating a nice seal. So, you know, don't pretend like you're tightening down a cylinder head or something. So here is our rear cover, and this actually holds our one-piece rear main seal. This is our brand new unit from Felpro. Alternatively, you can get one from Ford, but the link is located down below in the description. It came in our really big, nice Felpro gasket kit set. Also, you need one of these. And this I had to get from my Ford dealer, because this is actually kind of a trickier part to find. It's called a slinger, and this goes on the outside of the rear main seal, and you have to have that. It kind of goes like this, but what we're going to do is install this in here first, and all I've done is clean this up really thoroughly and clean this inner race with carburetor spray and compressed air. But before I get this started, what I'm going to do is take our good old friend RTV and just put a little bit on the end of my finger and just apply it to the outside of the rear main seal, and that's going to provide another layer of sealing, and it's going to provide just a smidge of lubrication. You don't have to do a lot. You just want a little bit on there, not a ton. And don't get it on the inside of the rear main seal, just the outside. There you go. Looks very good. And then we can just gingerly set the rear main seal into its home, making sure it's going to go in there square. Like that is very good. I'm just going to wipe off the excess with my shop towel. So once you get to this step, I have a couple of oil filter sockets, and the reason I have these is because I don't have a race driver big enough to really cover the whole thing, but this oil filter socket seems to do the trick quite nicely. And what we're going to do there is, I almost like getting it, just kind of tapping it in a little bit just to kind of get it started, so it starts more or less on square, and just kind of keep going around, and then you can put your makeshift race driver perfectly square on it and just give it some taps. Check it, see if it's going in right, and it's not. There we go, that's better. Looks pretty good so far, and then I'm going to switch to a different race driver or oil filter socket so it can fit inside of the housing, because my other one's just a smidge too big. And be careful on this. You can actually send the rear main all the way through the plate. There's nothing that holds it back from just falling out to the other side. So give it some taps and then check the back. So I know that's not far enough, but I want to show you what I'm talking about. Is on the back side, you should be able to see that this surface right here that's on the end of my fingertip should be flush with right here. So let's just keep tapping that down. So right there, see where it's just meeting where the bevel edge kind of slopes down? Right there and right there is absolutely perfect. Just make sure it looks like that all the way around, and your rear main seal has been installed. So now our seal is all nice and square and uniform and looks like a million freaking bucks. Totally digging that. And what I'm going to do next is go ahead and put this on the engine without the slinger, just because I want to be able to kind of maneuver this in such a way that the two inner lips of the seal are going to be the way that I want them to be. And if you put this on before that, this will actually prevent that, or maybe be insanely difficult to double check and make sure that the rear main's going to function. And trust me, this will leak like a sieve if it's not just right. So the next thing we're going to do is take our good old friend Ultra Black RTV. Now, there is no gasket for this rear cover. Crazy, I know. But what they expect you to do is just grab RTV and lay, I don't know, maybe like an 1/8 inch bead inside of this groove, and we're making the gasket. And then go around this bolt hole, even though there's no groove, just for good measure. And then come up this kind of arch. Looks nice. And then don't fill this bit in here. And continue with our grooves. I notice this one has 2 grooves, so yeah, blop that up. And then keep going. And it's okay if you mess up, you can just wipe it away. Luckily RTV takes a while to set, so it's not like, you know, super glue or something. So just keep laying it down in the groove. And I'll link down below in the description this exact RTV I'm using. It's made by Permatex and it is my absolute favorite. And no, I'm not sponsored. Awesome. Now it's ready to go on our engine. So go ahead and orientate your back cover to match with your engine. Pretty easy to see which way that goes on. And I've also lubricated the crankshaft turning surface for the rear main so it doesn't start up dry. You never want anything to start up dry that is involving metal and rubber, such as this seal. And we're going to drop it down, doing our best to not disturb our bead. And you can do this off the engine stand. It makes it a little bit easier, but I don't want to take it off just yet. So we're going to have it on like this. So when you put it on, you just want to like, I call it hooking. You're not really hooking, but hook the bottom here. And then you just kind of pull it up and on, just like that. The grease really helps out. And make sure it is orientated correctly, not disturbing your bead of silicone. It's off the dowels, there we go. There we go, it has 2 dowels. I think there's 2, yeah, there's 2. One on each side, so make sure it lines up like that. And then look really far in there. So you know that your rear main is on correctly when you see this lip right here look like this against the crankshaft surface. If this is folded in on itself, go ahead and take it back off. It's okay, and try it again, but it needs to look just like that. And now I can put some bolts in. So on the replacement bolts, they have an 8mm head, and I'm going to go ahead and put some RTV on the threads because I noticed when I took them out, they were coated in RTV. So we want to replicate that and go ahead and replace all of these bolts, and then we'll tighten it down in a sequence. So I have my torque wrench loaded up and set to 89 inch-pounds, and what we're going to do is just kind of start in the middle. There we go, and I've already brought these down just a touch. You know, taking the slack out of the bolt, as it were. There we go. So 2 sides, and then I'm going to go across over here, and across over here, and then did that one, so we'll go over here. 89 and 89, and there you go. Our rear cover's installed. So now we can worry about putting our roller followers on. I will sometimes refer to these as rocker arms. Yes, I know they're not rocker arms. It's called a colloquialism. Anyway, these roller follow arms, there is our part number, and these are the updated Ford design. And you can buy these on Amazon. You can buy them from the Ford dealer, which I recommend because you know you're getting the correct part. And what we're going to do is take them out of the packaging. This is our, ooh, nice roller follower. Oh, that's nice. New updated bearing design and everything. These are the ones you want. And I'm just going to plop them in oil. I'm going to let them all sit in oil for at least an hour, ideally overnight on these. Now to install them, you do need a special tool, and that is included in our kit when we install our cam phasers. This is what we use. Looks very familiar, right? What we're going to be using out of this kit today to do this job is this tool, and this goes together to go underneath the cam and depress the valve so we can kind of just sneak the roller follower in.
And I'll show you how that works in just a moment. Also, another tool that is helpful to have is this. This is a crankshaft turning tool. It comes with a kit. This whole kit is only $30, and the link is located down below in the description. And this just kind of lets you turn the engine over easier. You don't necessarily need this for this situation, but I thought I'd mention it. And a damper bolt. Sometimes you'd put this in the end of the crank snout, and that just lets you turn the engine over via the regular bolt in case you didn't have the old one or something like that, but I don't think we're going to be using that here today. So what we can do is take these two pieces and head over to our engine. So what I'm going to do now is look in the spark plug well for number 1. You do not need a borescope camera to do this. You can just look in there. I can see it with my eyes right now, but it's hard to get this camera in there, so I'm going to use this one instead. So if we go down in there, check it out. You can see the gold paint from my signature from earlier, and we can see that the piston is just a little too high. Because we're going to be depressing the valve to get the roller followers in, we want that low. So let's go ahead and crank it down. So we're going to go ahead and go down with the piston, and I want this basically as far down as it can go. Ideally as far down as it can go. There we go. That's plenty of room. So before you work on any cylinder, we want this basically at bottom dead center or pretty darn close. Doesn't have to be dead nuts on. We just want plenty of clearance so that way the valve doesn't crash into the top of our piston. That'd be a bummer. See, there's our valves, and we want to make sure that it can be depressed all the way without coming in contact with our pistons. So now it's at the very bottom of its travel, or close enough. We know that it's not possible for the valve to touch the top of the piston. And make sure you do that for every single one you do. I'm only going to show you how to do one of these because they are all exactly the same. So the next thing I'm going to do is take my Lucas Racing Assembly grease. I will leave a link down below in the description. This stuff is the best. I'm just going to take a little bit on the end of my finger. You could do this with Permatex Ultra Slick. Some people even use engine oil. And what I'm going to do is just apply it to the tip of our valve. And then I'm also going to put it on the very tippy top of our lifters. So go ahead and do that for all 24 lifters and all 24 valve stems. So all of them should look like that on both sides of the engine. All right, so we're gonna grab this portion of our tool. We're gonna orientate it this way with the cam pointed away from the valve. So we're only gonna do the 2 intake ones right now because we need the camshaft load to be completely pointing away from it with the piston down like we mentioned earlier. Otherwise you're not really going to be able to fit the roller follower in there. It's kind of a dance. So we're going to grab this part of the tool and just slink it in. Be very gentle. You don't want to mar the camshaft in any way, and these cams are really expensive. So we're going to have this part of the tool. You can just pinch it to kind of get it in place. Okay, so we want it kind of rested like this. You can see the 2 tangs kind of rest against where the valve covers are going to go. And we can adjust it so it's nice and back like that, because you can't have any kind of like gap or slop or anything, so it has to be basic like that. And I know you can't see on camera, but this hole is lining up as a straight shot perfectly for the top of our valve. So then we can grab this kind of crow's foot looking thing, part of the tool, and just place that on the top of our valve, and then this part of the tool needs to go under that. Just rotate in position. Oh, I see. This only goes on one way. Interesting. So it has a flat spot that lines up right there, making sure that the foot of it has a good purchase on the valve. It's not like gonna slip off. And then we can grab this part of the tool, which actually does the depressing in of the tool itself, and just keep going by hand. Oh, look at that. We can see the valve, the top of the valve, getting pushed down, and sometimes the thing doesn't want to go, so just push on it like that. You see that nice little jaunt it did for me. There we go. So now that the valve is decently depressed. It's not going to be fully depressed. You're not going to get like a whole sweep all the way down compression, but it's going to be enough for us to hopefully sneak one of our roller followers in. So the tip of the follower goes on the tip of the valve, and then the cup part goes on the lifter. It's on this side. You can't quite see it. And we'll just try to sneak that guy in there. Okay, come this way then. Yeah, there we go. There we go. It's going to be a little bit of a dance. This isn't something you're going to be able to just kind of throw together in 2 seconds. It's going to take you a little bit. And that's okay. It's a little fiddly. So I just readjusted the foot. It was actually binding against the head a little bit and kind of preventing this from going down as far as it really needs to in order to work. So hopefully we can get our roller follower where it needs to go now. So I've changed camera angles because this is really fiddly and really handsy, and everything is covered in grease. So it is pretty difficult for me to show you because obviously my hand has to be in the way. So I apologize in advance, but basically you just want the cup side of the roller follower to come in. There we go. And that's how it goes on, just like that. Once the cup side is nice and fully flush on the lifter, we can come over to our valve side. So right here we can see that our roller follower arm is resting right on top of our valve, which is awesome. You might also notice that I've put this beef washer in my tool because I really wasn't getting enough travel out of it. Hey, cheap tools, it happens. We're gonna go ahead and release that now, and this will put the valve pressure on that roller follower and prevent it from ever coming out. And go ahead and get that out of there. You have to take this part completely off the tool. There we go. And check that out. Our roller follower is nice and installed and it can't fall off. It is on its home and looks really nice. So we can get the other piece of the tool out of there. And check it out. One of our roller followers is installed. How cool is that? And the even cooler part is all the rest of these are exactly the same. So just do this 24 times. Yeah, it's a little time consuming. Just be mindful of what you're doing and making sure you're not crashing valves into pistons, and you want the lobe completely 180'd from the roller follower you are trying to install. So once they are all installed, I'll go ahead and turn the camera back on. So I've already got all 3 roller followers for cylinder number 1 here installed, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a glop of my racing grease. You could use regular engine oil too, or Permatex Ultra Slick like we've done in the past, because we don't want these, even though it's a roller, we don't want them to go dry. And you can't over lubricate. You can certainly under lubricate though, and we want to avoid that. So we're going to sauce those up. There's really no way to do this before you install the roller follower because you'll just make a big mess and it'll make it really tough to install. So you can't like sauce it up like a traditional camshaft. So now we can rotate the engine over. Oh, you can hear the valves working. And again, just keep saucing it up as it's being rotated. Because this is a machine surface and it is brand new, we never want that to ever run dry. I'm just going to keep doing it because if anything, the rollers are being lubricated as well. And you can see that the grease is getting squooshed out. That's why it kind of looks like that. But what you can't see is the, very fine amount of film that's on there just from rotating it over and stuff. So that's pretty good. So you just want to keep lubricating these up. You want these guys to be nice and sauced up for their future very long life. And that's pretty darn good. And just keep hitting it with lubrication. Again, engine oil works perfectly fine. So that means that this piston is completely installed for valve train purposes, and just do exactly what you did here for the rest of the piston. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. So with our valve train all installed, what we're gonna do is move on to just kind of pre-lubricating our timing chain. You might have noticed I didn't keep this in oil when we were installing it. Usually you do that, especially on a long chain like this, but it would have made handling it and looking for our blue marks really difficult. So I kind of didn't want to do that because I had this in mind. All I'm going to do is just get some oil and apply it to the chain while I turn the engine over and just keep saucing it up. And it's just going to run out the bottom of the engine into my oil catch pan. Or if you already have your oil pan on, all the better. We'll put ours on in a little while. And just keep saucing it up. It'll go around faster than you think. It'll get on all the guides and everything, and all the excess will just run out the bottom. And there you go. It's pretty good. And just do that for both sides. So what's in this box, I've been excited for ever since we even started this build. I've had my eye on them for a very long time. They are our valve covers, and they have been sent over by our friends at Summit Racing, and I'll show you in a minute why I'm so excited. But there's our part number and the link is down below in the description. Of course, you could clean up your old valve covers and get a new gasket and run them, and that would be just fine. Or you can paint them and have it look as spiffy as you like, but you can go my route, which I think's the better route, and you're about to see why. Oh, yeah. Look at these. Ford Racing Blue. Got the silver livery in there. These are aluminum, and I believe this is a powder coating on there, and they are brand new and look like $1 million gazillion dollars. I am super excited to run these. It comes with new bolts, and it does come with the new gasket pre-installed. So again, if you're using your old valve covers, you're going to need a new gasket. I definitely recommend that. I think it's actually in our Felpro kit, so if you've already ordered that, you're already made in the shade on that. But enough yammering and looking at them. Let's install these. I'm so excited. So before we put our valve covers on, and just trust me on this one, we're going to put a little bit of RTV right here and right here where the timing cover meets the cylinder head. Just a dabble, do ya? Right there, and that's just going to ensure that we don't get a leak out of there because that surface is incredibly hard to seal. So we want to give it our best shot. And I'm just going to show you how to put on one valve cover because they're both exactly the same, but they are side specific. So make sure you have the driver's side on the driver's side and the passenger side on the passenger. So make sure you have your valve covers orientated correctly. They only go on one way on the correct side. So what you want to do is you just want to line it up. Make sure you get the control solenoid in its home and then come straight down just like that, and then we can start our 8mm bolts. Just start threading them, and I'm just going to bring them down to touch with my little electric screwdriver. And whenever you're doing this, even when you're just bringing it down to touch, you want to work from the inside out in kind of a spiral pattern. So and around to here, and down. Then over to here. I guess I technically did that wrong. Oh well. There you go. These are just down to touch, and the torque spec for these is 89 inch-pounds. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my torque wrench and get to work. So going from the inside out, I'm actually going to turn up the clutch on my little screwdriver here. I'm just going to bring them down further and further. And why am I doing that? Well, I want to go in stages anyway because the gasket is going to squedge out. And I want to do that in an even sort of spiral pattern. And then do it again, because it's just going to keep squedging out. See, it loosened itself just a little bit. And my valve cover, by the way, everybody, is missing some of the holes, and that's just because this is like a racing valve cover. It's not, you know, a bespoke OEM one. And if Ford doesn't think I need those bolts, I agree. Okay, so I've been around and around the valve cover quite a few times. Now I'm going to grab my torque wrench and set that to 89 inch-pounds and go in a sequence. So, you know, you just kind of want to start in the middle and then just work your way out. It doesn't matter, you know, how you do that, as long as it is a spiral of some variety. So I went like this, so I'm going to go this way now. I know it's a little different from the way I was doing it earlier. So I'll come down to this one. See, these are getting looser as the whole thing is coming down, which is completely normal. And that gasket is going to keep squedging and keep kind of almost self-loosening in a way. And then do it again. There we go. This is my third time doing it, so at least 3 times is the advice I will give you. And there you go. You know what? I'm going to call that installed, and it looks amazing. Do the same thing for the other side. So here's both of our valve covers installed, and I have to say, going with the Ford Racing valve covers was definitely the call. Check that out. That is going to look so good in our truck. So I definitely recommend these valve covers sold by Summit Racing, and of course the link is located down below in the description for you. In person, they look even better on camera, so I'm excited to see what this looks like in the truck. So that is how to put your front cover, your valve covers, your roller followers, your rear cover, all on your 5.4 liter 3-valve engine. This has been an amazing opportunity. I'm so glad I got to show how to put this engine back together from basically a 180,000 mile used engine into something that is brand new and will keep this truck on the road for a very long time with upgraded parts and a more robust oil changing schedule. If you found this video helpful or interesting at all, please consider giving a like or subscribing. It really helps my channel out. Thank you, Summit Racing, for sponsoring this video, and I'll see you next time.